welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the 9th monthly call of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. So I've got no excuses for being such an unorganised host, but my apologies. So we're going to kick things off today with a short talk from Andy Davies, who's Dean Trail Volunteers Chair and Dig Leader. He's going to talk to us about their combined brand, landowner, contractor, volunteer approach to revamping the Freeminers Trail in the Forest of Dean. After Andy's finished speaking, we'll do a Q&A session, and after we've sort of exhausted Andy with all our questions, we'll then want to open it up to a wider discussion, try and get people's feedback on the Trail Hub so far, and any feedback around UK MTB Trail Alliance's public launch, and whatever else anyone would like to talk about, really. So while we're on the call, let's Andy give his talk first, but then in the Q&A session, please use the little hands up button at the bottom of your screen so I know that you want to speak, and I'll call people in turn. When asking your questions, please say who you are and which group you're from. And also, could I ask you please leave your video on during the call, just so everyone can see each other when we're chatting. And also, please, if you get a chance, please change your display name to include the organisation you're representing. So, for example, you can see mine is Robin Grant, the UK MTB Trail Alliance. And having said that, over to you, Andy.
Hello. Hi. So, yeah, as Robin said, I'm Andy Davies. I'm the fairly recently chair. Naomi did a astounding job before me, but I picked that up recently, and I'm also working a lot on the coordinating the digs. So that's probably more what we're talking about today, is just how we put this together. So this is about the Freeminers Trail in the Forest of Dean, if you know that. It's the red. We are blessed with a very good blue, the Verdurers, which is the one that tends to win all the awards. So let's start at the end rather than the beginning. So this was one of the things that we wanted to do working with the brand was a brand gives you a good opportunity to sort of put a launch together. So YT can turn up in this case. Other brands are available, and I think there's a fair few who do this sort of thing. But YT put together this tent. They came along with some bikes and some demos. They brought some guides, so we could run some people around the forest. They did an amazing job of getting us some branded exposure lights with DTV and YT branding on it, which is amazing, which we raffled off, and just generally made it a great opportunity to sort of launch the overall work that we did. So the work that we did was this, one bit was this red skills area, which we worked on with the coaches. So we've got 3 or 4 coaches who work around the cycle centre, and they'd been sort of asking for a better area. This is a little bit out of the way of the main cycle centre, but somewhere that they can train people or coach people. It's also quite just a fun couple of jump line and a drop line. So this was the day that we had with YT. We had these are what we call the little fodders, who are the young kids who are learning how to ride mountain bikes very well, very well indeed. And they came along. We had big long trains going down these 2 lines. We had also got the first section of the red descent, which I'll talk about in a second. And you can see this is kind of the point of it all, really, is to see the kids having a good time on the trails. So just sort of wind it back a bit. This all started in the winter, and the forest is pretty nice in the winter when it's not raining. So we started off in the winter. So we had that we launched in sort of the end of March time. So it was pretty much a 3-month project, which was quite astounding for us. Most of our volunteer jobs tend to take quite a bit longer. I'm sure you're all aware of that kind of thing. But we'd been through a big process last year to see how we were going to revamp the Freeminers Trail. So as I said, we've got Verderers, which is well regarded blue cross-country trail, and we wanted to upgrade the red. So we went through a whole process of getting people's input into what they wanted the trail to be. And we got to the point of going, right, well, we need to sort of kick things off. At the very beginning of the trail, we were going to have a skills area. And to put the skills area together, we knew we needed contractors to do the sort of heavy lifting and bring in the machinery. So as volunteers, we can do the digging, we can do a certain amount of machinery in terms, we got a power barrow and a whacker or two. But anything heavy lifting requires contractors, and once we need contractors, we need money. So YT were putting together a trail fund, which was great. So we got them involved. Obviously, we're working very closely with Forestry England. We've been lucky enough to have three cycle rangers, pretty much full time. At the cycle centre, so we've got real presence from forestry, and they were happy to put in money as well. So we're getting money from them, money from YT, and money from a crowdfunder that we put together. So that got us the basic pot for starting to then go out and look for some contractors to build initially the jump line and the drop line. When we're doing that, we have to work with FE. So they've got a list of preferred vendors who we put together. I've got a feeling this guy's Clixby's. But for this one, we used Velo, and we do have On Track as well to call on. So they all work under the FE sort of umbrella contracts. So we don't hire them. While we pay for them, we have to use contractors who are on the FE preferred list. But from that we get a fairly good choice. We also get there is a smaller option where we can just use one guy and one machine for a day, which is just sort of cheap and cheerful option. He's not going to be by his own admission, he's not a mountain biker, he's not a mountain bike trail builder, but he will move stuff around and put materials in the right place and clear out trails under sort of supervision. So we've got those sort of three options really. You know, we're doing volunteer-led stuff. We're using a single guy just to do a bit of heavy lifting, or we're using one of these bigger firms. So that was the jump line, the drop line finished. And then we got to the point of we knew that we wanted to continue on. So this sort of gets you to the first bit of the Freeminers. The idea is that you can come and do these. If you can do these features here comfortably, then it acts as a bit of a qualifier. And we're going to be putting in same level jumps and drops throughout the rest of the loop. So we then put another quote out, and with Velo Solutions on site, it made a lot of sense to use them. One of the big costs you get when you hire these guys is a sort of startup fee. So that's getting them on site, it's getting their machinery on site, it's sort of your admin costs of risk assessments and all that sort of stuff. So if you can, one thing we always try and do is sort of tag on our work, anything that we're paying for, off the back of whatever FE are doing. So if FE have got a bigger bit of budget, they can pay for the startup fees. and then we just then have to pay on pretty much a sort of daily rate to have the couple of guys, couple of machines, and then materials on top of that. Also, because we're on this one, we chose to really bring together the volunteers and the contractors at the same time. So there's sections like this, which is a little climb back up. After you've done the skills loop, you climb back up. So this bit doesn't make sense to use big machinery. It just really needed brushing off, a few holes filling, and making good. So it's when you start combining the two, it's about knowing where and when to use which. So this is them putting in well, it's a revamp of I think On Track did this back in probably about 10 years ago. So it was getting pretty tired, and Bohr had been in digging up sections of it as it got older. So we pretty much revamped the whole thing. So this is the guys with their couple of machines going up and down. So you can see the sort of level that they're bringing it up to. They're doing all the digging. They were digging borrow pits as well. We're quite lucky that we can use a lot of the soil that you get. You just dig a hole, and we've got fairly good sandstone soil that you can use to surface the track. So they were doing a lot of that and creating the basic sort of groundwork. The other thing they do, and it's always worth thinking about if you've got a project, is we had some slabs in different places. So we got them while they've got the machinery to bring all the slabs together and put them at the top of the hill, so it's easier to drag them down anywhere. We also had more materials, so we had a mix. We got a mix of materials, so we got any material that they needed and the material that the volunteers would need when they came in to do their sections. So this then is the day that we had. So we probably had a week of them on site doing all the heavy lifting. I spoke to Ride Bristol actually about this model of combining the volunteers and the contractors. So it's an idea we stole from them, and they give us a lot of useful pointers on how to make it run. So here you see the guys with the full orange jackets are they're the Velo Solution guys. It's their dig, so we don't use our liability. We're using all their liability because of the heavy machinery around. They logged everyone on. They did all the sort of safety briefings, and we had a good turnout. It was a good busy dig. And then we went up there and did. So they helped in two ways. Obviously we were getting. They were getting us to do stuff that volunteers could do. It made more sense for volunteers to do rather than for them finishing off little features and doing the fiddly bits through the woods over the rooty sections. But they also spent quite a bit of time training our guys up on just how, the learnings they've got in terms of shaping berms and using the whacker and things like that. So everyone came away from it feeling like it was a really positive dig. And I think I'll come to this at the end, but one thing we've had problems with before is where you get a contractor built section that then, sooner or later the volunteers have to then go and look after. And there's no sort of real sense of ownership there. Volunteers much prefer looking after the stuff that they built themselves. So by doing the project this way, it certainly feels now like this is a DTV section, even though we were working so closely with Velo on building it up. It didn't all go completely smoothly. Some of this jump line was in a really boggy section, and if there's any sort of something to think about is you'll know your hill way better than the contractors generally do. Obviously they come in with a whole load of experience. They're, depending on which one you get, you're going to get more of a civil engineering or more of a bike park building sort of outfit. but they know, they know what they're doing when it comes to putting jumps together and shaping jumps, and generally it's sort of general drainage. But there's stuff that we know about that hill that, like this section here, that it's really horrible. And this is a clay section, and what we were getting was just sort of waves as everyone was breaking on it. So the last thing they did was drop us off a 10-ton of material here that we then, with volunteers, updated this section. So this is the kind of the problem that you get normally if you just bring in the contractors, use them on a section, don't involve volunteers at all, and then you have a problem like this. The guys, it's not technically a sort of warranty issue, so they're not going to come back in and fix it. So yeah, it's just something to think about. That was another section that needed a bit of work and a bit of drainage, so we got that sorted. The whole thing's running really well, but it was a couple of bits that we did on top of that. And then we're back to where we started, really. So that was then good enough to launch that. We used YT to do a bit of the to help us now promote more the next sections. So this really just got us the first section completed and rideable, and we've got something to show people of what the whole new Freeminers line is going to look like. And work continues. And again, I suppose this is going back to if you can bring in the volunteers into the process with your contractors, they get something out of it. They're learning new skills. They get that sort of sense of ownership. So when we have projects now, like the guys here are putting a path in back at the top, it's more of a feels like one of our projects and something that we want to do and do right. That's it. It's just the YT lads having a beer.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Has anyone got any questions for Andy? While you all think of it, I shall ask him one. So, Andy, you obviously talked a lot about the benefits of combining contractors and volunteers. And you did talk a bit about, what happens if you don't, i.e. volunteers don't have a sense of ownership over a section of trail that contractors have just built by themselves, and therefore it's harder to get people to turn out and work on those sections of trails. But are there any other differences as well? I mean, what are the downsides of either doing things 100% contractor built or 100% volunteer built?
I suppose one of the other problem that we saw was how you manage the contractors. So the question because we've got it's not an unusual complication, but you've got FE. If FE are paying for contractors, it's none of our budget, it's none of our design going into that. Those projects can be completely separate. You've then got projects which we kick off, but then we choose to just do with contractors. But then the trick there is how you brief a contractor to build what they're going to build. So we have had problems in the past where you get too detailed in terms of the design, and you don't you're bringing in a contractor who knows how to build really great bits of trail, and you're specifying that there should be a berm over there with a 90 degree radius, 15 foot, that sort of level of detail, and they're just, you're not going to get the best out of the contractors if you do that sort of thing. Does that answer it?
Sort of, yeah. And while everyone else is thinking of their questions, which I'm sure you are, all of you, and then I suppose going back to YT's involvement, so obviously that was, if I understood it correctly, that was just really about getting momentum behind the project, informing the community of it, and actually bringing a bit of money in as well. I mean, it was part of their, I can't remember what their trail fund thing was called. I think it's just YT, your trail fund. I think it's called. It's that obvious. But yeah, that was the
you know, they paid a third, FE paid a third, we paid a third, basically. But it was a great way. It was like, oh, we've got a pot of money, we've got a project that we wanted to. That skills area was more the project that YT were interested in, rather than Freeminers. And we knew we were going to put the skills area on that side. We actually retired another skills area that we've got made of wooden, the wooden drop line, which some people might know. Yeah, so it was the money, and it was the reach you get from a brand. So
okay, cool. And then obviously you mentioned that technically it was, you know, you actually gave the money to FE, who then gave the money to the contractors. Is that right?
No, we pay them direct, but we're working under their FE framework contract. So yeah, we can pay them direct. That's fine.
Right. Okay.
But we can't just hire someone who would just turn up with machinery on site.
Right. So they have to be on FE's
FE
approved supplier list, basically.
Yeah, to be able to bring machinery on site, there's a whole process you've got to go through. And if we, you know, I assume we could go through that process and find, you know, we've thought about getting a machine, you know, hiring a machine. We've got people who have got their tickets. So in theory, we could do it, but it's just all the hassle you have to go through with FE to get people on site. Whereas they've all done they've got a framework in place. So they've been through all the risk assessment and all the rest of it. But that side of it, the FE have just sort of tick boxed to say, yes, we're happy with, you know, certainly those big three. I'm sure there's more on the FE list, but there is an FE supplier list that you need to be on.
Yeah, and I think that will vary from district to district, probably, and possibly even within districts. And then another couple of questions while people are really thinking of their questions now. All right, let's get serious. You better come up with some questions, guys. So that model of, you know, Dean Trail volunteers as a trail association raising money to then spend with contractors rather than spending that money internally, is that something you've done quite often? And you know, what are your reasons for doing that, I suppose?
It's a good question. So I suppose we've just been going through sort of becoming a charity process. So we are in this specific instance, FE had sort of burnt their budget for the year, so nothing was going to happen. Velo came to us and said, look, we're on site, we haven't got another project to immediately roll off onto. If you've got 5 days of work somewhere, we could do a project. So it was very much sort of an opportunistic one there. And I guess the real benefit, which I sort of alluded to at the beginning, was we got shitloads done in very little time. So that section, I think if we'd done it ourselves, I doubt we'd have got the Burmy flow, because we tend to be building more on the sort of the techie features. So we'll put berms in, but not the berms that they were doing. And it would have taken us 6 months.
Right. Okay.
Easily.
Okay, that's a massive difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I suppose just to sort of explore that a bit more before we go to Tony, who has put his hand up, which is great. You know, I suppose that question of, like, you know, as a trail association, yes, you've got volunteers, but you also have the ability to raise money from the community, which you can then spend as you see fit. And I think well, I think you know, I'm not saying no one else does this, but you're quite a rare example, I think, of that second, you know, doing both, you know. But yeah, actually, I think it's a really interesting model where, you know, obviously, you know, FE and other landowners that people may have trails on have got very limited budgets. And actually, if you could boost their budgets by raising money yourself to get spent on trails with contractors, it's a really interesting model. As you said, it saves you an awful lot of time over volunteers doing similar work. So yeah, it's just great from that perspective. I did have something else to say, but I've forgotten. But anyway, Tony. Oh, you're still on mute, I think. Even though it says you're not on mute, Tony, you are not. We can't hear you. Is there anyone else got another question while Tony sorts his sound out?
You hear me?
Oh yeah, we can now. Yeah.
Just general question is, I mean, I've done most of my training at FOD with YMTB and been coming to FOD for the last 3 years.
Oh,
Also
yeah.
sit on the same working group with as Robin and Zoe. Is why do you think DTV and FOD across FE is seen to be the holy grail, and why do they always look to like, oh yeah, well that's, I mean, in discussions I've had with Forestry England on areas in the southeast and Robin's party to some of that, is they almost seem to dismiss what's been done at FOD as, oh well that's FOD, that's different to everywhere else. Why has it been so successful where other areas have really failed to gain traction?
So yeah, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of little factors, I guess, being at the end of the M4 and on the way into Wales and picking up a lot of traffic that way. I don't know whether it was the sort of decision early on to create a cycle area. So we got a 6 square kilometre sort of enclosure between the 4 major roads, which we can do with what we like, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know whether that's it, whether it's because there's sort of, it was just luck at the beginning that they started to get in that cycle of building good trails, getting car park money, getting the cafe, the coaches. There's all these, even though they're third-party businesses, they're still pumping loads of money through FE. So you've got it's a financial model that works. I don't know whether you have.
Over the last couple of years, you seem to, I mean, the cycle centre trails seem to have undergone a huge regeneration over the last probably 18 months.
Yeah, it's. I think one of the biggest changes was probably when Steve Paddock joined, who's unfortunately he's left. So he came in as sort of chief ranger. He'd worked at Bike Park Wales before. Obviously, we've got people like Ian who helped set up Bike Park Wales. So we've got a lot of understanding of the Bike Park Wales model within the people who work there. And I think there was just a real push to take it up to the sort of next level.
Which is great because it provides an example for us all to refer to as, have you seen what's going on at FOD? Why can't Forestry just tap into a small percentage of that and help the other region generate something that's suitable for everyone?
Yeah, and we had the Forestry Rangers there for their cycle conference. So we had Dan Jones, what's his name?
Dan Cook.
Dan Cook, yeah. We had Dan Cook. We had rangers from all over the place. We had a lot of his staff as well. So the people who were working behind the scenes more on the cycling side. So I think the lady who's doing a lot of the contract stuff. And they were all there, and there was 2 days. I was at the afternoon of one of the days, just talking them around that, pretty much the presentation I just gave you, but actually walking around the site doing it. And the other rangers were doing a talk on how to sort of push the grades, because I think there's a well-known problem that FE sort of tend to grade down rather than up. And we've changed a few of our sort of signature trails, like Countdown Launchpad, to blues where they were reds before, just to give us a bit more space to play with.
Okay. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, just to add to that a bit. I mean, I think Andy alluded to it, but I suppose just to be a bit more explicit, I think it is because Forestry England make money out of mountain biking at the Forest of Dean, right? As Andy said, there's a whole swathe of stuff they make money from. First and foremost, a massive car park, with quite expensive car parking fees. But then also, you know, the cafe pays Forestry England for the right to have a cafe there. The bike shop pays Forestry England for the right to have a bike shop there. The bike hire place pays Forestry England for the right to have a bike hire place there. You know, the coaching people
pay their percentage.
Yeah, pay. You know, the other training providers pay. So it all adds up. So they can see that there's a, you know, if they keep those, they can attract more. If they can attract more users, they can make more money. But you know, how do they attract more users? They make the trails better, I suppose, to a certain extent. You know, whereas a lot of other forestry sites don't have, unfortunately, that many facilities that your forestry can make money out of. In a lot of cases, not even paid car parking. You know, I know, you know, in a lot of places where there is paid car parking, you know, actually a lot of that money doesn't go back into the trails. But I suppose that's because that virtuous circle hasn't taken hold, and the local FE management haven't seen that virtuous circle, and perhaps, you know, a car park alone isn't enough. I don't know. Tony,
that's why QECP is quite interesting, that they've come out and clearly said that any income generated through the park goes back into the park.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get that message from other FE sites.
Yeah.
Although QECP is different, isn't it? Although it's a FE land, it's leased by the council, right? So and run by the council, not FE. Cool, Stephen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Yeah, I'm Steve Wardle from Cwmcarn Trail Crew, which is we're really in our infancy, so really just started. And it's quite interesting where you're talking about the different landowners and different parties, because we've really started from the leisure manager at NRW pushing to get a volunteer trail crew in. And my question to Andy, or indeed anyone on the call, is how can you give us tips to raising the volunteer interest or the volunteer numbers? Because certainly early days are finding a bit of apathy, where probably people are thinking, well, NRW should be paying for the trail maintenance, not volunteers or indeed the County Borough Council. So just sort of any tips for encouraging people to come along?
It's a tricky one. We're sort of, we've got enough regular diggers now, and ever since I've been at DTV, there's been a sort of solid set of regular diggers, and as long as you've got them going, we get dribs and drabs, probably one or two. We run digs on a Wednesday and a Saturday every couple of weeks, so we end up doing one a week, in effect, for a month. Yeah, the trouble was, I wasn't around at that stage when they were trying to make it happen. But I think in our case, I think the bigger problem you've got, especially in where you are, is wild trails, and why would someone come along to a sort of NRW sponsored dig when they can just pick up a shovel and dig with the Risker boys or the Mackham boys and the Wiley boys?
That's it. That's like, yeah, I mean the sort of NRW leisure manager thinks there's a place for official Cwmcarn trail volunteers and Risker riders and all those other ones you mentioned. Yeah, which it probably is, because a lot of the Risker stuff comes off the Cwmcarn trails. So yeah.
So I suppose you've got to find your sort of regular core. The other thing that we're working on at the moment is corporate digs, which would definitely play into your sort of sweet spot, I reckon. We can get a team of 6 or 7 people turning up on a corporate dig, coming along. Obviously they haven't got the experience, but they're keen as mustard. They're generally mountain bikers, or at least enough of them are mountain bikers to know roughly what a trail is and what a berm is and that sort of stuff. But we've just got our charity state, a full sort of charity status, and we're thinking we haven't proven this yet, but we're hoping that now we're a full charity, it's going to be a lot easier to approach local businesses and sort of say, you know, so many businesses have these corporate social responsibility days, and you tend to get people with 2 or 3 of those that they've got to use in a voluntary basis every year. So if you find a company of, say, 1,000 people, that's you don't need to attract many people from that company.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah,
great. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a dilemma at the moment. Is sort of, do we start raising funding to contribute to this, or do we have to get a core of diggers together? So it's like a catch-22. Yeah.
So it depends what you find. We're doing okay on diggers. What we can't find is people to do all the admin and the fundraising and the tweets and that side of it. So, but you know, I mean, I guess in our history, there's been times when they've found a lot more fundraisers, because there was, you know, the fundraising side on DTV, the table sales that we run regularly. We tend to run a table sale every month. You know, we're getting donations, so it might, you know, that might be the way to start. Maybe don't worry about if you can't get the diggers. Focus on the charity side. I don't know. It's
when you say table sale, when you say table sale, is that what you just sort of have a stall in the car park?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just explain that a bit more?
If I'll just put the pick up. I'm not so slick.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the Cwmcarn car park's just as full as the Forestry England one every weekend, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've got, so we can see it there. So we have that. That's our table sale going. So that's an example. We can just get that. We can get that set up in about half an hour. We've got a container full of all the kit. We've got clothes, you know, bits and pieces, equipment, backpacks, all that sort of stuff. Some of it's nice kit. Sometimes we'll get stuff donated by magazines and brands. So we're getting sort of new kit, but a lot of it's just donations. And then, yeah, we're running this out the car park once a month, and tend to get 500 to 800 quid for the day.
Cool. Let's have the screen back, Andy. Yeah, Stephen, I suppose just to add some comments of my own. I mean, you know, one is, you know, trying to get over that issue of, you know, currently the people you're asking to dig on those trails don't have a sense of ownership of the trails. They think they're NRW's trails to look after, as you said, right? So how do you change that? And I think you can't change that overnight, but I suppose, you know, any opportunity there is to change that just slightly, you know, people will get more and more of a sense of ownership over part of the trail, the whole section of trail, and then hopefully eventually the whole trail itself, right? So I suppose if there is any other, you know, if there is any NRW paid for contractor work happening, you know, using the model like Andy's just described, so actually at the end of that piece of work, even though the contractors did 95% of it, you know, because the volunteers did another 5% on top, they now feel ownership for that whole piece of work. Should make a massive difference to people's sort of loyalty, if you like, to wanting to come back. You know, the other, you know, another thing that's perhaps not obvious, but is obvious when you sort of say it out loud, is you've really got to, you know, you put in a lot of effort to getting people along to their first dig day. You've really got to almost focus that you know, your effort on that dig day to making them want to come back, rather than the amount of work they get done on that dig day. You know, because really, what you know, even if they only do, you know, a quarter of the amount of work that you would perhaps want them to do on that dig day, because you focus on other things, if you get them back 10 times in a row, you still get more work done overall, right? So, you know, it's how do you make that dig day fun? I mean, the Aberdeenshire Trail Association talk about this really well, where they really try and, you know, turn their dig days almost into parties, you know, where they're just sort of having fun, and it's a real social event. They have a barbecue afterwards, they have drinks afterwards, you know, it's sort of trying to turn it into something that people want to come back to time and time again and have a lot of fun doing. and as a social thing, rather than, well, that was a bit weird. You know, I didn't really meet anyone. I only chatted to one guy, and you know, and then we all went home afterwards without saying anything. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying that's what you do currently, but you know, really trying to take that sort of lifetime value approach to volunteers and volunteering.
I think we're in a position where we're saying we're starting off. The time we spend on the trails at the moment, we're guided by NRW paying for the contractor. So it's we really now got to make that leap, as you said, Robin and Andy, and sort of take ownership ourselves. So that's what we're doing. So all that's really useful feedback. So yeah.
Cool. Bryn, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi, it's Bryn from Bardon Trail Association in Leicestershire. It was more just a flash thing, agreeing with Andy about the corporate events. We've had a day with specialised soil searching.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That really helped for some reason. I think it's just because mountain bikers love a gimmick. Lots of people seem to turn up to it, which was really helped in numbers, as Stephen was talking, trying to entice people in. But the number one thing that I've found, just for your local people turning up who want to have a dig, maybe don't really know about any sort of digging but want to get involved, it's really simple, is stickers. Like the amount of people that have turned up and driven miles really only because I've said we've got loads of stickers to give to every person who turns up. It's amazing. So best 40 quid I ever spent for the trails was getting some stickers. Mate. That's it.
We lost all ours at the Malverns. We went to the Malverns. Everyone likes stickers. We got any stickers.
This is it. Like I've seen sort of 10-year-old boys and 40-year-old men eyes light up the moment that I have produced a sticker for them. So that's what I'd say, do. You want to get people down, get some stickers printed. We've lost.
You're on mute, Robin. Are you talking?
I was talking, yeah, but I was on mute. But I was also mistakenly thinking Tony had his hand up and he didn't. It was just happening, so it didn't matter that you missed what I was saying to myself. What other people think?
I hope it's on your to-do list.
Well, stickers.
On the UK.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a few different things, but we'll come on to that later in the conversation, maybe. So while other people are thinking of more interesting questions than this one, I will ask the boring question that I forgot earlier, which is a minor question, but going back to you know, the way you said it worked, where actually it was sort of run as Vela Solutions dig day when you work with them rather than your own dig day. Do you know if, you know, like the other two contractors that are on there, they're on your FE local list, so I don't know, I can't remember who they were, Clickspies or someone else. Do you know if they would be able to do the same thing, or is that anything unique to Vela Solutions?
I think they can all do it. I think Velo Solutions we knew from Bristol, so we definitely sort of fixated on them because Bristol had run them with Velo Solutions. And some of their guys, you know, they're very tight with Velo because they've got a lot of their diggers. Their dig leads are Velo employees. So.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So that was my interesting question. Anyone got else?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think they would, but I haven't. Yeah, I don't know 100%.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm not trying to do an advert for Velo.
No questions from anyone else at all. It doesn't have to be specific to what Andy talked about. It can be any other Forester Dean or Andy related questions or anything else at all. No.
So hey Robin.
Hey Zoe.
Hello. I was just going to say, I know that they've done quite a lot up at Forester Dean about sort of women's involvement and getting women involved in sort of the dig days and women only dig days, and I know I spoke to Fee at Aberdeenshire about how they've done it and got more women involved, and just to talk about that really, and to share that success, because I think that's been really good to see more women being involved.
Yeah, so I think Forestry England, they had the Dames rides. What are they called? I can't remember what they're called. They're Dames Digs, but there's a Facebook group, and they were quite big probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I think off the back of that, then they started doing Dames Digs with DTV, which all had lots of D's in it, so it made a lot of sense. But they sort of died off a bit, so we are just trying to get Sarah, and so Naomi, who was the chair, she comes back for the women's digs. I spoke to Fee as well about how to get, because we want the women to lead their own digs, but also have more women on the regular digs as well, and try and from what Fee said, if you're doing one, then you get more, you know, if you do women only digs, you get more women digging. It's that sort of simple, really. So that's our, I think that's our goal. But it's just hard. It's hard to get it organised and just get it. You know, I think what we're trying to do now is at least get one a quarter in the diary. So the next one is going to be in September.
Yeah, I think that sort of from my experience with what we do at Girls Alive, just mountain bike rides and stuff, is just having dates well ahead really helps, because often, you know, in my family circumstances, you know, my daughter's racing, we're here, there and everywhere, school, other hobbies, like having, so I've already penciled in, for example, all my rides until November, and they're already on our calendar, so that all the women can go, right, that's the weekend ride that month is on that day. And that just really helps me, because what you tend to find, and it's not universal, is that often women are the main carers for the family and the kids, even if you're working as well, you still tend to pick up all that slack. And so where a guy may just go, right, I'm on Saturday morning, I'm going to go to this dig, a woman wouldn't naturally do that without having to juggle a million other things. And so it's, what I really liked of what Fee was saying is that they do digs where you can take your kids along, for example. Now, I know that some men very much view their time away from their families as that's their mountain bike time. Do you know what I mean? And it's not always the case for everybody, and it's certainly not always the case for women. I mean, it is for me. I like to ride with my kids. I also like to ride not with my kids. But it's just that trying to think of something from a different angle. And I think, as is present on this call, you know, it is still very male dominated and really easy to forget that everybody's lives are massively, you know, juggling everything, and how can that work? And, you know, we've tried to get involved with the trail builders here in Surrey, and it's very much, well, we do it on a Friday, and if you can't make a Friday, then that's just tough luck. You don't get to help, and it's a little bit gatekeepy in a way, and then you don't get that ownership. It's very exclusive. It's very, you know, very insular to try and get into that. And in my experience of a lot of it, it's who you know. It's creating those relationships with people, and that's, you know, whether that's with YT or with Specialised, you know, and we're in a unique position in the Surrey Hills, in that we've got all of those brands based here, and lots of unofficial trails and no trail association, multiple landowners, and it's massively complicated. And so these, for me, like sitting on these calls as a woman that mountain bikes and that would love to be involved in various different ways, but just can't get in there. It's just interesting to hear, and thinking about how we can shift that, because it's very much, I have got some relationship now with some of the trail builders, and just trying to pin down a date to help, really. You know, and it was very much we'll give you some shears, and you can do some cutting back. You know, we can't do anything more than we can't do anything more than a slight bit of gardening, because we couldn't possibly lift a spade or do anything slightly, you know, more complicated than that. But to be honest, it's just, I think it's, you know, certainly within the Surrey Hills, I think so many people want to give back because they recognise what we have here, and people would love to give back, and it's some people are preventing that from happening. And so I think it's how can those people that do want to give back, so whether it's, you know, at Cwmcarn, there will be people that want to help, and it will be, is it through time, is it through money, where is their abilities to do that. And I often think you do just have to keep asking, because people miss the message. So sometimes you have to ask, like, you know, 20 times before somebody hears that message.
Just keep asking.
Yeah, totally. Girls Alive is a charity. We are predominantly run with volunteers. They run all of our events and stuff. So it's interesting to hear, you know, you've gone down that charity route. And you know, there's lots of different routes. Obviously, you can do CIC, you can do non-profit, you can do, there's lots of different ways, and charities are certainly quite a complicated way to go in terms of the governance and all of that sort of side of stuff as well. But yeah, just to put that out there, that, you know, there are women out there that do want to get involved with it. Often in CAM, you know, a lot of the time my hands are more tied. Maybe it's not to say it's always the case.
We've been trying Sunday. Having a bit more success with Sundays. Saturdays are no good because they're, especially in the Forest Dean, there's so many kids
clubs and stuff.
Little kids clubs and stuff that the women tend to get tied up in that, unfortunately. But yeah, Sundays bring the baby along has been working. We do get quite a lot of kids on a Saturday doing the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But we do get, and I wouldn't say 50-50, but it's not too bad a mix between mums and dads turning up.
And I mean, when I've always been super impressed when I've ridden at FOD. Like there are way more women that ride at FOD than I've ever seen anywhere else, and I think part of that is because it's so easy to navigate. In terms of, it's all signed, it's very clear, you've got it all graded, you know. It's very different than if you ride in the Surrey Hills. You really do need to know where you're going. Nothing's signposted. You've got no idea what you're going to come up on a trail. And so it's really hard for people to get into riding around here. And that's where Girls Alive have been great, in that we have mountain bike rides and we run them. We're not ride leaders. We are just, you know, volunteers, and we're just going out for a bike ride. But we will very much plan a route, and we grade our rides so people know the length, the elevation, the difficulties you might look at. We always try and put some of the trail names down, but they're not all the same. People call them different things because they're all unofficial. But that's helping sort of around here, is that it's just difficult to navigate because it's not signposted. But I've felt the difference when I've ridden at FOD. You see so many more women, so many more kids. It's just amazingly accessible. And it's really great to see that, and it feels very different when you ride there compared to some of the other places. So there's clear work going on there, and that's really good to see.
Okay.
How did your last Women's Dig go, Andy? How many people did you get along?
I think we had 6 or 7 on the last one. The Dames Digs, when they were going full strength. So if you can get a good women's ride that you can piggyback off the pack off, which might be an idea for the Cwmcarn guys, is try and find a local women's ride and target them. But they were getting 20 odd people on those. Yeah, and that reminds me, actually, there's but the ride itself died off, and therefore the digs died off with it.
There's a trail association called Trash Free Cambu up in Cambusbarron in Scotland, as you'll guess from the name. And they've got a concept of pick dig ride, where they combine a Trash Free Trails, sort of endorsed trail clean with a dig, and then they go on a ride. And it's a model that they think is really effective, that might work in other places, might work in Cwmcarn, for example. If everyone's interested, that's I think they were January or February's call. There's a Zoom recording of him, of Ali from Grassroots can be talking about that model and how well it works for them. Ian, you've got a question.
Yeah, it was just I know you touched on the timings with the women's digs working better on a Sunday, but it was just really if you've got any kind of feedback on what timings work well. I know you mentioned your Wednesday and Saturday dig, but a certain time of day, whether you've tried different times of day to get more volunteers or less volunteers, and just how long they spend with you when they turn up.
So we got Wednesday morning. We don't tend to do afternoons because things tend to be, so I think people like to be up and early and get stuff done. We do a Friday afternoon. That's the only exception. We do a Saturday. So the difference between Wednesday and Saturday, which are our main, probably 90% of our effort, is Wednesday's a lot more grey hair. Sort of semi-retired guys, and it is mostly guys. And then a mix of the corporates. So we'll get the odd person coming in there who not very randomly at the moment who I'd like, oh yeah, I've got a volunteer day, that's why I'm here, sort of thing. But we're going to probably try and target that a bit more. And then Saturdays tends to be, so you've got some of the DFE kids, which is always nice because you can get a quite young crowd on a Saturday, which gives you a bit of hope. And then a bit more mix as well in terms of gender and age and stuff. So Saturdays is generally pretty nice, but it's very up and down Saturdays.
Yeah. What time do you start those?
9:30 we start.
It does move on to another point I was going to make. It's a little bit for Zoe really as well. A bit of a shame that she's not feeling as included as she could be in a scene that she's mad on. But one thing I did notice was that you'd been asked to cut back vegetation and stuff like that. And it's one thing that whenever somebody asks me what can I do, whether they're male, female or whatever, if it's not involved in an actual dig day, it's so important to get all that stuff cut down. And there's so much of it that it's the one thing that I as a builder really channel anybody into doing, because I don't feel there's as much of a risk involved. So that I just wanted to make that point, that I'm hoping it's not just because you're seen as a woman who's only capable of cutting back a bit of vegetation. It's really important as a builder. And I haven't got the time to go back over hundreds of meters of trail that are getting grown over. So I just wanted to make that point, that it's something that I'm definitely guilty of funneling people onto if it's not part of an actual dig day. So that's it.
Cool. Any other questions for anyone? Otherwise, I've got a question for Andy, which is, so obviously you've got, what is it, Launchpad or there's two? Are they? Is it one trail with the same name?
Launchpad, which is the wider. It's meant to be the accessible trail, I think.
Yeah.
But it's such good fun, everyone. It's
And is that? And have you got any plans to make any of your other trails accessible? Do you know if they are accessible?
So the green trail is just so FE have got budget now from DEFRA, I believe, for the green trail. That's been signed off. On track at doing that, and they're starting on site within a week, I think. So that would be about 1.5 kilometers of fully accessible, proper wide accessible trail with features and skills areas and all sorts. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how that plays out. But accessibility, the reason I believe, well, one of the reasons that On Track won that was they came in with a design that was accessible first, rather than being a green trail with, oh yeah, and there's these accessible things tacked on.
Right.
So it should be really interesting. I haven't seen the design yet, but
yeah, no, it just happens. I was at a conference last week and bumped into Craig Grimes from Experience Community, who are an accessibility charity. And obviously I've had conversations with some of the accessible community. Chris, who's actually on the call as well, I chatted to recently, and I know he rides in the Forestry Dean a lot. I don't know, Chris, have you got an opinion? I mean, how many? I know you ride sort of fairly extreme stuff compared to most accessible riders, but is most of the trails at the FOD accessible for you, or not? Not really.
Yeah, so I ride what's called a bowhead reach, and a lot of our group rides. Sorry, I'm Chris, by the way. There's another bike that Bowhead do, which is called an RX, which is sort of based on a Bosch e-bike motor with pedal assist. Actually, most of the trails, if you've got the balls to do it, are pretty accessible on those particular bikes.
Yeah,
it's not on all adapted bikes.
Yeah, yeah, we've definitely seen someone, it may have been you, going down ski run. So yeah,
it's probably myself. There's about 3 or 4 of us who like to go there. Yeah, I'll say the pedal bikeway is a really good spot for us to ride because it's got great parking, accessible toilets. We can get in and out of and the park, and the lead up to the trails is nice and easy, and everything funnels back nicely to the car park on that side of the hill, obviously. But yeah, even though there's sort of the more wilder trails over the other side of
the Barn Hill stuff,
we can ride. Some of us can ride a lot of those, but it really depends on your injury level and your experience as well.
Yeah. So is there any particular, if we're designing trails, is there anything to watch out for that we could do differently that would make just things?
There is, in fact, so in Canada, they're sort of really far ahead in the game of adaptive trail. Sort of, they're using their existing trail network, and there's usually like 99% of the trail, if you're riding a bowhead or a similar kind of equipment, 90% of the trail is fine. But you'll get like a couple of pinch points, like really bad off cambers, or like a bit between 2 trees. So just little things like that that stop us accessing the trail. And like Cwmcarn, for instance, the motocross gates really scupper us. So actually, I've only been there once, and I had to go with like 5 people to carry me over sort of motocross gates and things like that. So stuff like that kind of limits us accessing the trails. But yeah, it's such a broad subject, adaptive riding, like where I'm more at sort of one end, and it's quite a broad section of riders.
Well, I think we'll have a good, because we've got everything up from the sort of family trail. We'll now have this green. Assume the blue's okay. You got the red, you countdown launch pad as well. It'll be interesting what we do with the red. We haven't really thought about that, but it might be worth us getting. I mean, I only live in Bristol, so I'm up there quite a lot. So I'll have to get together, you guys, and have a chat with. Have you ridden that new one down from? I haven't yet. No. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you make of that, because that's. And what we quite I work with also the distributor who sells bowhead bikes in the UK. And what we're keen to do is actually get trail builders themselves to have a go in them on the trails. Because once you ride them down the trail, you actually get an idea of what it's like and what different features work and what doesn't. I think the Rangers had a go in some, and they just said it was just you get in it and you make a whole load of assumptions of how you ride it, and it's just not. You just everything's you're pushing when you're pulling. Same but different is probably what I'll describe it. We've got the guys at Bike Park Wales riding them as well, and and it's sparked some thoughts in their minds about how to make changes to just small tweaks to trails to make access better and things. So it's good. So if any of you guys are interested in sort of getting involved with that kind of thing, we're happy to sort of come and visit. As I say, I'm sure I've mentioned we've just become charity, but we are on about we've got some funding which we've earmarked for accessible riders, and we were hoping to get some bowheads that can be hired at Forest of Dean. So that would give us access as builders, and make it easier for everyone to hire them. But we're just trying to figure out the logistics of it, because we did have quite a lot of the gravity fed ones.
But
it's just such hard work with them, like the bowheads totally.
Well, it's kind of so my sort of history, my accident was about 16 years ago, and at that time there was literally nothing about. There were just a few adaptive road hand cycles which were awful for mountain biking, so I kind of shelved it for a long time. I just got on with other sort of activities, and it wasn't until a few years ago, battery technologies got better, and then Bowhead came up with their leaning bike. That it's kind of opened the doors up again to a lot of people. So I think sort of the technology has pushed that forward, and that now that we can sort of get up the hill under our own steam, and things, so it's made it a lot better.
Well, actually, there was someone looking after disability issues. British Cycling got in touch with me last week. I had a call with her. She's really keen to sort of try and make some stuff happen around the UK. So I did promise to put her in touch with you already, Andy. But yeah, it does. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot we all could do individually to, make the trails that we personally look after more accessible. But then obviously there's, I suppose there's actually sort of trying to make sure there's a route in for beginners who have never done it before. And really, they're, like beginners, able-bodied beginners, normal, they're going to need centres close to close to big cities where they can go and try it out for the first time. Do you know what I mean? Forest isn't too bad for that, but it's about how we get that provision in place across the whole of the UK.
I mean, the FOD's great because there's a real wide spread of trails that you can sort of start on and progress up through as an adaptive rider, which is good.
Cool. Bryn, you had your hand up. That might have just been left over from last time. Any other questions for Andy before we sort of move on? No. Well, I was after the next section of the meeting, I suppose, just for some feedback on, for those of you that are using the Trail Hub, or at least have logged on and looked at it a couple of times. If you've got any feedback, how do you think it's going? Is there anything we could be doing differently? Is it useful? Is it not useful? What's missing? What do you want to be? What do you want to be there the most that's not there already? Any comments? Including from you and including from Ian and Andy.
I'm honestly, I'm surprised. It's just, you just have to get used to the cadence of it. But whenever I go in, if I've left it, I would say every week, it feels like there's loads of stuff in there. If you're doing it every day, it can feel a bit quiet. But the stuff it does happen. But it seems to be one of that weekly cadence, which probably fits with the kind of how trail associations work. You've probably got people who've only putting their trail association hat on once a week.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
So yeah, I think it's just getting used to that cadence, and all the conversations seem to be happening.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it is working really well. Although today it broke for the first time for some unknown reason, but the hosting company fixed it pretty fast, which is great. But I suppose one of the things I wanted to talk to a group about, not obviously there's only a few of us on the call, but still be good to get your feedback, is one of the things that I was hoping that would happen on the Trail Hub, which hasn't happened, which is groups that are really underground and really don't want anyone to know about their trails, come clearly don't feel that comfortable talking on the Trail Hub. So, you know, Stephen, that's not you guys, but that's, you know, that's some of the sort of more underground groups in various different South Wales valleys, you know, haven't felt comfortable contributing to conversations because they didn't want to be, you know, to NRW to know who they are, for example. And as a result, we're sort of missing them from the conversation. But I suppose if that's the case, what do we do about that? So we could try and put some conversations behind a sort of a password protected area that only certain people have access to, but there'll still be trust issues there. Or we could just accept that as a fact of life, that people aren't going to feel that comfortable talking about, you know, what could be viewed as illegal activities. And then if we're going to do that anyway, then why don't we just, if we're not going to have those conversations, then we might as well then open the platform up to other groups, i.e. landowners, brands, journalists. So I don't know if anyone's got any feedback on that or any thoughts on that.
I think, like you're saying, people building illegal trails, I think if they can just see what's going on, whether they might not sort of get involved, at least they can see how things might evolve for them. So I think it's good to have a place where they can see what's going on, maybe not contribute, but because there'll be a time that maybe, depending on their situation and where their trails are, that they might be able to sort of, I guess the word is sanctioned, I guess the word is, I don't know, but yeah, it's a good place to just be able to see how things might evolve.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the other thing is just building trust, in that the forum's been there a little while, but not that long. And so people are still learning, you know, what they can and can't say in there and those kind of things. I think once it's been established a little bit longer and people have kind of built that trust with it, but I can see where you're coming from, Robin, in opening it up will give us more people in there, but might lose some of those people, and then they might not feel quite so trusted. But I think it's really early, you know, kind of, although it's been there a while, it's still very early days. And so people,
I mean, it's not just having more people in there for having more people in their sake. Or, you know, although that would help perhaps in terms of keeping the conversation going. But you know, that's only a minor point. I mean, I suppose the point is to actually involve landowners in these conversations, and we might actually get better outcomes as a result. Or, you know, involve brands in these conversations, and we might get them paying more attention and spending more money on trails. And, you know, likewise with journalists, we get a lot more stories, I think, out of. You know, I've noticed a lot more coverage of trails in certain publications since I've started sending those journalists our monthly newsletter. And actually, I've had several journalists ask for permission, you know, for access to the Trail Hub, and I've turned them down because we're not, you know, we've explicitly stated we haven't got landowners or journalists or brands in there at the moment. And again, likewise, I've had, you know, a few landowners ask for access as well. And I also had to, you know, awkwardly, Bob Candle's partner Ali, who doesn't work for a landowner, I've turned her down because they're probably using the same computer, right? So yeah, it's a tricky one. You know, on one hand, you're right, we could leave it for a few months, but at the same time, by leaving it, we're continuing to exclude other parties from the conversation that could bring a lot to the table, I suppose.
Yeah, with what you said about the vetting there, it reminded me of one of the comments that someone did make to me about how anyone could be in that forum. And so I think although we know that you're vetting those people, some of those people might not know that they're not being let in. And so they said to me, you know, you've opened a can of worms. People are in there talking about building illegal trail or building unsanctioned trail, and then they're basically opening themselves up. But at the moment, you've created a really safe space for them to do that they might not realize is that safe. And that was their comment. Once I pointed out that you were very good at making sure the right people got in there, they were like, oh, that's okay then. But I don't think they realized that before they kind of suggested that might be the challenge of getting more people to post more regularly about that type of thing.
Yeah.
So it might maybe putting somewhere in there that just says this is who's in here. I know it probably says it somewhere, but
it does say it somewhere, but you're right, it's very hard unless I put it as one of those top slots, which I suppose I could do. You know, it soon gets lost, doesn't it? You know, after a few days, just disappears down the feed as new posts emerge. It's very hard to communicate that. But I could do that again, or I could do that on a more regular basis, or I could make it one of those posts at the top. yeah, I'm sort of getting to the stage where I think, you know, maybe we should start opening it up. You know, like, you know, some of the conversations I had with, you know, it's one guy in South Wales in particular I was chatting to about it, you know, like, you know, trying to get them to contribute, you know, like, I actually discovered the functionalities people can choose to go anonymous for individual posts if they want, and then come out anonymous again. So one person's used that functionality, but only because I explained it to them beforehand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could make that more public. I could make people more aware of that, I think. But yeah, it just feels to me like I think it's.
What about?
I mean, go on, Andy.
Just having a completely separate, say, a WhatsApp chat, but
yeah, could do.
Then, they've still got access. So you make it a sort of, you know, it would just really completely separate the fact. You know, you then turn the hub into the sort of the public, not public, completely public, you know, but you get journalists in there, you get all that sort of benefit. They can still, any of them can go in there, but then there's a WhatsApp or whatever, another sort of secure platform where it's less formal, more chatty. I do think the software is hard to be chatty on it. It sort of doesn't thread. It doesn't do chatty threads. That's not to say what it does isn't good. It does sort of. It gets debate happening and all that sort of stuff. But it's just sort of getting used to it compared to a chattier format.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the downside of WhatsApp is it's, you know, it's not searchable. You know, if you join the chat 3 months in, you've missed all that conversation that happened before you arrived, etc., etc., etc. And it is very hard to manage in terms of
but that might
people joining and leaving the group.
Yeah, but that might be what they, you know, if you're trying to, you know, ace, like I'm not, I'm well out of the generation to know anything about these things, but you know, the old way that Snapchat worked, that, you know, you're having a quick conversation and it disappears, is probably what they want. They don't want a knowledge share. They want to be able to have a chat about something that will then disappear, and that any record of where the trails were, what was being discussed, how they're going to start a new trail somewhere has disappeared.
Yeah. I suppose I just had ambitions that, you know, we should be adult about it. You know,
that's never going to stop them coming in to the hub.
Yeah. Well, it might, yes and no. I mean, it might do it because you're providing another avenue for it. But I think you're right. You know, maybe it isn't just about, because obviously I could create a secret area that's just available to a group of people within the trail hub itself. But as you point out, that may not solve the problem. Okay, cool. That was it, really. It was just that. I was just some initial thoughts about that. So that's really useful. Unless anyone's got any other comments on that.
Well, I was just going to say, Robin, that you kind of have to come back to what is, you know, your big aim, your big world why of the UK, you know, Trail Alliance. What is the purpose of it? What is it that you are trying to build? And keep that at the back of your mind every time you ask yourself these questions. Or does it still fit with that aim, that big world why of why we're doing it, you know, why you're doing this, what the aims are of the hub? And if the answer is no, then it doesn't go that way. I mean, I don't know that it would be right to have it as a free-for-all for anybody to just be able to join, because I do think it would stop some of the conversations. I'm not sure it'd be appropriate for some of the landowners, because there's fairly, you know, some fairly hot topics in there about a lot of, you know, like you said, about things that are potentially illegal. And there's lots of people sort of at the beginning of the journey, and there's lots of people that are really established, and there's a lot of variety within that. And I think the resources in there are amazing. If you don't know some answers to things, you can there's always going to be someone in that group that's done it or has tried something, and it's a brilliant resource of people. And I think to get all those people in one space is phenomenal. And you've done so much already, and there's so many amazing people in there involved in this, that that should be congratulated. And I don't think you need, you know, don't worry too much if some of those people that you want involved just aren't yet, because I think the momentum will come, and then those people will want to be part of it. I think you're always going to get people, though. There's always going to be groups that just don't want any part of it at all. They don't want to be legitimised. They want to stay hidden. I think what Chris was saying about actually being able to see some of the benefits to being a trail association, you know, legitimise what that can bring you, is useful. And I think it's really helpful to see people and organisations at every level of the journey. I wonder whether there is an area of like, you know, that would be suitable for journalists or that would be suitable for brands, but that some of the other conversations were a bit more hidden.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the software only, what I can easily do is sort of create a subgroup of people and give them access to an area that the main group of people can't see. But unfortunately, I can't do the reverse. What would, if I could do the reverse, it'd be brilliant. I could just sort of bring journalists in and only let them see a certain section of the site, and then the vast majority of the site would be visible to them. But I can't do it that way around. I have to do it the other way around, and it's, you know, sort of, you know, technically I could achieve the same thing, but it would just get really, really clunky, both logistically and visually. And so the only realistic way of doing it on the platform would be to sort of create some area, you know, secret, whatever you want, name you want to give it, where people know they can safely have secret conversations that landowners won't see, but the rest of the site is visible to everyone. But you know, perhaps I'll mull it over a bit better. You know, as I said, I genuinely, you know, I feel like there's, you know, yes, there are some conversations that perhaps would be challenging if you're a landowner, but, you know, those conversations are happening anyway, right? You know, they're already happening off the platform. Yes, it's great they're happening on the platform, but we're only going to affect change if we can involve landowners in those conversations. You know, the world is the way it is. I think hopefully they're as adult as we hope to be about this, to try and, you know, make the world a better place, right, to a certain extent. You know, it's only going to be landowners that are interested in mountain biking that are actually going to bother to sign up and you know, come on the platform. But, you know, I'm not sure I would. You know, one possibility, to your point, Zoe, you know, we could potentially open it up to the whole world and have no vetting at all. I'm not sure that's what I was suggesting. I mean, you could also, you know, I probably still would vet landowners to make sure I knew who they were. I probably still would vet journalists. Do you see what I mean? I wouldn't just let anyone.
It would be a trust thing anyway, wouldn't it? It would. Yeah. You'd keep it controlled you know, both to the journalists. You know, there's issues with the journalists. You know, you'd want some control of anything that you see in there needs approval before it gets, you know, suddenly appears in a public space. It can be used as a sort of a generator of ideas for putting articles together, but you can't just go and cut and paste a whole discussion out of there. But
well, yeah, I mean, I suppose by default they would feel that they could, but unless we made that very clear that they can't.
I think you'd have to make that really clear.
Yeah.
And then if they break any of those rules, and we'd expect, you know, stuff to leak out, but if it did, then you would, and the same with if the landowners then use stuff that they find in there to block a trail or do, you know, they'd be out anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a trust, you know, you've got to build that. It's a trust. You're coming in, we're trusting you with all the information you find in here. If you misuse it, then yeah, it's on you. And
what do other organisations do that it's not mountain biking related? You know, for example, I don't know, the Horse Association or the
climbers.
Yeah, the climbers. You know, what do they? How does that work? Do they have sort of people involved that are sort of in those fields, or is it just about the climbers or the horse riders or I don't know. We're just trying to think outside of, you know, the mountain biking world. How are sort of organisations like this done in that way?
The short answer is I don't know. So, like, I could make some guesses and we could go and have a look, but, you know, even going and have a look isn't necessarily going to show you everything that's happening. It'll just show you what's public, won't it? I can talk to probably someone at the BMC about it. and see.
I just wonder if they'd say, oh, we tried X, Y, and Z and it didn't work, and these were the issues we had. And then you go, oh, okay, well, we'd then have to have those rules in place, or we'd have to do these. But again, it's thinking about it on that next level up of an organisation, as we are about trail associations. It's like, you know, if you're starting out on your journey as a trail association, you're going to ask a more experienced trail association what to do, or how to raise funds, or how to do things. So I'm just thinking about, you know, that way round, but for, you know, outside of the scope.
Asking other organisers. Yeah, it's a really good idea. Well, look, I'm quite friendly with someone at the BMC now, so I'll definitely ask them. I could probably ask British Canoeing as well. Well, they're not called Paddle UK, what used to be British Canoeing. But obviously they've been around an awful long time, both of them. You know, they may have gone through these growing pains in the 1920s before social media existed, right?
We did.
But I could ask.
We did have a sort of a microcosm of this with so we got a regular diggers Facebook group, and FE were always not allowed to go in it. But I went through it and went through all the comments, and in the end, the only comment I could find that FE would find and it was just the Rangers. So these are the Rangers that we dig with all the time, and everyone knows. The only comment I could find was on a public website anyway. So we have let them in. We then let them in, and then 2 of them wouldn't join because they don't use Facebook. And the one who did join has left.
In disgust.
Yeah. So don't get too excited about landlords actually giving, like, turning up.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. It might just be 1 or 2, but I suppose once it's 1 or 2, then yeah, interesting. Okay, well, cool. Unless there's any other feedback on that, any feedback on our launch? Anything that how do people think it went? You know, do you feel like most mountain bikers would have noticed, or do you think it would have gone unnoticed? What do people think?
Well, there seemed to be quite a bit of press on it. I saw it sort of in lots of places. I shared it in a few groups, and yeah, I think it had a bit of a buzz about it. It seemed to, from the articles I read as well.
Cool.
I like the Ewoks.
Anyone else? Sorry?
I like the Ewoks.
Andy warned me. I shared that comment with him before I posted it, Zoe, and that was his response. You're too short. You're too short. That's exactly what you said.
Therefore true, right?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, all right, cool. Look, unless anyone else got anything else they want to add, or any questions they want to ask of anyone else, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thanks very much, guys. Andy, thank you so much for sharing knowledge with us. It's been great. Thank you everyone for your contributions. If you do get a chance, I'll be probably next month's newsletter. I'll be asking everyone to share a post to try and get more donations in. So if you could all remember to do that, that'd be really good. That'd be really helpful. If any of you felt like making a personal contribution, that would also be very much appreciated. Thank you, guys. I think we've got a good couple of months left of our funding campaign before we get to our target, but I think we will get there, which is good. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, and see you next month.